listened to Morgan Freeman talk about, this is a conversation with Mike Wallace, 60 Minutes, when he was alive. And Mike was talking about Black History Month. And Morgan kind of looked at him quizzically. And Mike, well, I mean, Morgan was, and Mike Wallace was like, well, isn't that important? He goes, well, do you have a White History Month? And Mike's like, no. He goes, well, and Mike goes, well, I'm Jewish. He goes, well, you have a Jewish History Month. He goes, no. Why do we want a Black History Month? Why isn't it American History Month, right? And then Mike says, well, what about racism? He goes, what about it? He goes, don't think about it. So the idea and the power in a word, leadership, right, or servanthood, or racist, or whatever we want to label things, there's tremendous power in those words, and certainly as leaders, and it's certainly sometimes as people come across needy, we need to be thinking about the words we tell ourselves and the words we allow into our cranium, right, from other people. So,
right.
so very powerful.
It's interesting too. Yeah. Cause I think that, and this is a very true statement. This is something that's really important to me too, is when Morgan Freeman's saying that, he's ultimately saying what the highest goal is that we want to get to is where we just see each other as men. I'm a man, right? It's not just this color coding, but what we have to do is we understand that that rhetoric exists now, right? There's the black, there's the white, there's these rhetorics that were created from nothing, right? And they exist. And so what we do is we have to make sure, if you almost look at Jesus Christ, the way that he spoke was he was able to speak in a language that was not reality, but it was the reality of the people that were around him. He says, the kingdom of God is like such and such, but let's tone it down. The kingdom of God is like a farmer in his land. And so what he does is he speaks to the people in the language that they know. And what I love about Morgan Freeman when he's saying that is he's saying ultimately we want to get to a space where there's black culture and there's different cultures. I understand that. But ultimately we want to get to a space where we are just seen as ourselves, right? We can honor the cultures, but at this point as we live, we have to speak in the language of the rhetoric that was created. But once we understand to speak and love each other within that rhetoric, we move to a new rhetoric of humanity, the human race. That's the space that we want to get to. But we can't jump to that and still understand all the systemic issues that are existing. But we have to come and understand that, okay, we have to use the rhetoric that exists and then move. And so in the same way, when you're talking with leadership, when I'm talking to leaders, I can't just go into a business and organization and say, okay, we're going to change it to servitude. They're not going to have the mindset to do that. So what I do is I speak in the language of leadership and I redefine what leadership is. And then once we understand that it's a different leadership, then all of a sudden we can move it from this kind of cog machine to a kind of what I say is, instead of an organization, ultimately what it is an organism. An organism naturally works to keep all of the system alive. An organization is more separate. And so when people get fired or let go, there's no pain at the top level. But if we can turn it into an organism, then we understand that to amputate a piece of it is painful. And if there's any way that we can heal it without losing people or firing people just to make sure we're making more money, then what we're doing is we're empowering people. So I speak in the language that exists, organization, leadership, management, but my goal is to slowly transmute that till we become post to a place of it's an organism, it's a community. Ultimately, a business is a family. When you have that mindset, you're not just thinking profits over people. You're thinking about the entire holistic goodness, and that's where power exists. But we start in the language that everybody knows. We'll speak as farmers, and we'll move our way up.